sun's out, guns out, Kev. It's cold. It's cold.
What are we doing here, Andrew?
Ooh. Hi everybody, welcome to Archimarathon. Kevin Hui, Andrew Maynard. Today we are at Terrace House, which is still under construction, but only weeks away from completion. We thought we'd give you a bit of a rundown.
It's house, single.
Yeah.
Even though there are multiple dwellings.
We've got this history of like just calling it, whatever house. And now we're doing multi-res, we just keep doing the same thing. Same with Slate House in Brighton, in that video.
You're gonna roll in the gutter?
It's really dirty. It's really dirty. I don't want to. I'll spin. No, we're not rolling. This is much more civilized. It was so cold out there, I couldn't even get an intro done. It's like, welcome to Archimarathon. This is much better.
Bloody early too.
Yeah, well, been up since 5, trying to capture sunrise, which we didn't do.
Fail.
Another productive Archimarathon shoot. Camera 1, camera 2. Camera 1, camera 2. Camera 1, name the movie. What movie? So we're in a housing crisis. I put in a whole heap of money. Mark Austin put in a whole heap of money. You and your family put in a whole heap of money to try and create housing.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you?
Well, you sold it to us as an ethical thing to do.
Sold it to you.
You sold it. You're so like.
So what's the problem with the current housing model?
Well, it is driven by developers. And that's fair enough. It is an economic model. We live in the capitalist system, and they make money and they make housing. But unfortunately, the downside is it is usually just money driven. There was no option. That was the only option. It's just the market driven, profit driven housing stock. Which is all just about selling it and selling it on, rather than actually people living in them and the quality of living. We whinge about no one's doing anything about it.
We put our money where our mouths are. Instead of complaining about the problem of inequitable housing and lack of good quality housing stock at a reasonable price, we put our money up. Austin Maynard Architects acted as developers for the first time ever with no experience. And it's been a long journey, and we're almost finished. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, a remarkable success. The idea here was that it was the idea of putting community ahead of profits. So as you said, homes are being treated as commodities. So instead of asking people what type of homes they want to live in, developers are asking real estate agents what will sell. And so a real estate agent doesn't really care about livability. They're driven by, I sold that previously, so let's sell it again. And if it's driven by what investors want rather than what homeowners want, then it's going to be a very different livability equation.
But developers are amazing risk takers.
It is, that's what I've learned, is it is actually controlled chaos or controlled free fall. You start with best guesses in terms of economic feasibility, but the inherent risks are huge. You don't know where you're really going to end up. You don't know what market shifts are going to be. And we've seen significant market shifts. And when I say that, I mean in terms of not just builders' prices, but also material supply. And then you compound that with COVID, where we've just got containers with kitchens and materials just sitting waiting to go through customs coming in from China. So developers are taking huge risks. I guess.
So they're not inherently evil. It's just that is the world they live in, and they are just having to make a profit because that's their job, really.
Yeah, they're dealing with a commodity. It doesn't matter what the commodity is. It's how much money can I make out of that, and how much speculation, how much risk can I, and hopefully the payoff is really big to them. The problem is it's housing, which is a human right. The problem is if you don't have access to housing, it is your very existence and your mental health that's on the line here. Now, that's not really the mandate of the typical developer. The typical developer is trying to get returns for their investors. So what we did here was we risked money with a hope for return, some sort of good ethical return, not a huge amount of money, but some sort of return. But more importantly was the idea that we would create housing that is environmentally, financially and socially sustainable.
But it's a demonstration and a disrupt in the market just to show that it is possible.
Yep.
I think we talked about, it's like instead of capitalism cranked up to 11,
Yeah.
it is just turning it back down to, okay, just make money, but just don't go overboard.
Yeah, that's something James Legg from 6 Degrees said. They created Nightingale 2 in Fairfield. He, at the start of this whole process, sort of disputing that this was charitable. It's not a charity. It's creating housing, but yeah, turning capitalism down from 11.
The numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11,
Oh, I see.
11,
And most of
11,
the
and then
amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? It's not 10.
So what does that mean? So environmental sustainability, that hopefully makes sense. 40% of carbon emissions come from our built environment. So our homes are huge contributors to carbon production. So this is about creating fossil fuel free housing. This, unlike so many of its predecessors, actually is. This is fully electric. It's got 14 kilowatts of solar on the roof. It's got an embedded energy network that buys green energy at cheaper than you would buy brown coal. And they're super efficient. The efficiency of these apartments, we've got in excess of 8 stars in terms of energy rating. And the air tightness is like you don't see in Australia. These are European standard air tightnesses. Now, why is that important? For 2 reasons. Every single home has its own ERV, which is an energy recovery ventilator, which has a really efficient heat exchange. So it keeps the temperature of the apartment while constantly moving fresh air. You don't get that in Australia.
Not yet.
Well, hopefully it becomes standard. But also in COVID times, instead of having centralised air conditioning or some high energy usage type of ventilation like that, each apartment has their own ERV. So you're not distributing potentially virus-laden air elsewhere. But also we're right next to a tram line and train lines, kicking up dust and making noise. Like you were there today, it's amazing when you open a door out onto the balcony, and it's just all this noise, and then you close it and it's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
But these are just normal things that you find in Europe.
Standard in Europe. There's nothing innovative about this other than we've engineered the economics to tune down investor returns to try and up the livability and the long-term sustainability of these homes.
I think it's important to note the community side and the access as a developer, bypassing real estate agents, you're able to access directly and also market to the end users of the building. And therefore also designing, thinking about them and what kind of environment they would like.
Absolutely, and so the cool thing about this building, you think about this site is 10 metres wide by almost 60 metres long. That's a weird shaped site. We refuse to have apartments that face into each other. We want them facing out to the street. So that meant we can only get 4 apartments on each level, which is great. You want very few apartments each level, so you don't have these long corridors with lots of doors opening out onto it. But because of that length, that didn't lend itself to a standard apartment layout, which is all about reducing corridors and making it as tight as possible.
But wait, row houses, terrace houses, traditionally has that typology of a long, skinny plan. Is that why it's called terrace house?
That's why it's called terrace house, because we're basically grabbing terrace houses, which Austin Maynard Architects knows all about because we're constantly renovating them, long corridors with bedrooms and bathrooms coming off them down to a living space. And we've used that typology here and we've stacked it 6 stories high. And the reason that really works well here is because our purchaser group, our community, a lot of them are young families. They can't afford the freestanding house. They don't want all the maintenance of having a freestanding house. They don't want to live in the standard apartment because it's so tight and you're on top of each other. This actually gives them that amenity of a terrace home, but the shared benefits of low running costs because of embedded energy, the embedded network as well, super fast internet speeds, but the entire building shares the cost of that. So that collective, plus also just the support of living with other people that are in a diverse community means that, if you need some childcare or you need a cup of sugar, people are right there and they know each other, they know each other's name.
But there's a strong sense of community building as well because of the shared common areas. Instead of just being a corridor, they're things you try to make sure that there is a sense of community.
Yeah.
There are, for example, the entrances, you have the entrance area kind of can be a study area and they can be, looking out to and shared in that space, but also you can wave hello to each other, but also the roof deck, obviously, the communal services, the laundry, all that stuff, instead of having it in the house, it is shared. It is a bit odd, I guess, for Australian standard, but it is a community building aspect to have kick-ass laundry and also, clothesline, which is rare to have in an apartment. Except the shitty clothes horses that you're trying to shove into the balcony or something, you can have some better thing, but also it just becomes a shared space, a shared environment, have barbecues and stuff.
There's talk of putting a pizza oven up on the roof. Are you burning wood to do that? I don't know. These are but don't want this to be a militant building. You know what I mean? Like a hardcore building. So it's whatever people choose to do. At the end of the day, I like the idea that we are handing this building over for the community to alter their future. I think there's some of the precedent buildings really demand that people live a certain way in the buildings, and we don't want that. We really just want to go, we did our best to create this really sustainable long-term community. You guys create your future. We're hands off now, instead of micromanaging the whole thing.
So you learned some hard lessons from doing multi-res and being a developer and having to make profit instead of just pushing the architecture. Yeah. And there's obviously a lot of compromises that need to be done, as you do. But what are the main things that's happening with this design that you kept, regardless of any of the compromises that need to be done? These are the core things that you just did not let go. What the main thing? The main thing. The episode.
The main thing. There's two main things. You're allowed three main things as far as I'm concerned. Two main things is community. So one thing is community interaction. So having those incidental moments.
The concept of community.
It's about community
and nature.
Sense of entry and celebration of entry.
It's a journey.
So bumping into each other, it all goes back to Hermann Hertzberger's Lessons for Students in Architecture, one of my favourite books. So how do you create these accidental moments where you can stop and perch and have a conversation with somebody? So you do that in the lobby spaces. As you mentioned before, these apartments, 4 on each level, have this shared zone in between. So you break down the scale of the building. Instead of just having, there's rooftop, so that's where the community gets together, or you go to your room, this has both. That's also the reason we put the studies at the front. So instead of having a long corridor to get down to your living room, which is a big sort of commitment socially, come past all my bedrooms. And when you go through a terrace house and you go past bedrooms, everybody tries to have a look in there, don't they? So we created these study spaces to be similar to the veranda space, the space where you can sort of hang out at the edge of your private zone and talk to people.
But you do have that at the entrances too. It's instead of apartments just have a corridor and then you just got a door off the corridor.
Yep.
The shape allowed for almost a little ownership of the space in front of it. I can imagine stuff get chucked out there and plants and other stuff that people kind of colonize.
Yes, that's the big pickup. That's a great pickup because that's what we've really tried to do is you have the circulation, the lift and the stair entering centrally onto those shared platforms.
Like on that plan.
Yeah, you have it.
Here's something we prepared earlier.
Stair, lift opening into that central spot there, but this does feel like it's this apartment space. It's actually common area. Yeah. But because, again, this is Hermann Hertzberger, creating this little moment where people will inhabit it however they want.
If it was in Asia, there would be like shoes all on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what I'm really proud of is thinking about the way that people will interact. Instead of just going roof garden, tight little corridors, that you end up with these different types of engagement. And the same thing happens at ground level too, dropping off your bikes, and there's going to be a little bike pump station and the storage area and things like that, where you actually will be sort of dropping off your surfboard and things like that, and these moments will happen. And then you've got the big shared space on the roof. So that's one, is all those layers of community space, including the entry as well, having a little cafe right next to that entry space, so you can have friends come over, but you don't have to drag them into the community spaces. So there's little benches and garden around the entry as well. So that's one of them. But the other thing is about context. This is an area that has been rezoned. So you can have all these big buildings in there to try and create a lot of housing. And you can see it from this model.
Like this guy, yeah.
Yeah, so these huge monoliths coming in where it was low scale and industrial. And all of these will be turned into apartments. And you see...
And it needs to be, because it's got some really expensive infrastructure we've built. But the thing is, it's just been very low density and pockets and leftover bits.
Absolutely.
So density is needed.
We need to house people, and it's ready for it. You've got 2 bus lines on Dawson Street. You've got the trams coming through Sydney Road, all the shops in Sydney Road. This is the main shopping district.
Train station.
Bike path through there. You've got the gym here, you've got the library here and part of the town hall. So you've got all the infrastructure you need. So that's the other cool thing, is we don't have any car parks, we don't have any cars, because you've got so many transport options in here. And if we had have introduced cars, it would have added up to $70,000 per apartment.
And it's a very skinny site too. It's very hard to get in the basement.
So when you look at
parking and all
that,
stuff.
if you look at the Saxon Street main entry, that would have been a garage door or a dirty great pit.
Yes.
So that's how you kill a street. Where Saxon Street, council's already invested in a garden, so you get this community space. That can keep extending along as we get the new 6 Degrees building coming in the side as well. So it turns it into a human space instead of just a back alley where cars go down. So getting rid of cars was fundamental, but you've got all those transport options. I just realised that the plans say available on some of them. They're not available. This is totally sold out, which is awesome. That's one thing I learned. It's really hard to sell things as well, because we've just put on every single hat. We're investing my own personal money like you have, but Austin Maynard Architects is also the architect. We're also a developer. We're also selling everything.
Didn't you work 3 years without pay?
This has been a long project, and the economics got so tight, we've basically been donating our time. And you think about selling all these bits of real estate, a real estate agent would get 30 to 40 grand a pop on each of these. We've just sold it. I will never be a developer again. I really want to be an architect delivering these solutions, but the risk and the difficulty is taxing in many ways.
But you learned a lot out of it.
Learnt a lot. And that's the thing, is instead of it being this competing thing of developer trying to just make crazy amounts of money, architect being idealistic, we actually now know the levers where we have room to get really good gains and where you just need to leave some stuff, like downpipes through balconies. That's not a fight worth having. Cost benefit. That's the great thing actually, is working out cost benefit. If something seems like a great architectural idea, but it's going to cost a fortune, and just completely throw out the metrics of creating housing costs that are somewhat accessible, you've got to abandon those ideas. Mark Healy from 6 Degrees actually said an amazing thing. If you're trying to save costs, which you always have to do, it's called value management, you chuck out your favourite thing first. That's actually really good advice to architects. Whatever the bit is your favourite, chuck that out first.
That's not your main thing though.
No, it'll be something pretty.
The bling.
The bling.
So the other main thing, context.
Context. So this is a place going through transition. Things are getting knocked down and new things coming up. And boxes are being put in their place. But just because it's in transition doesn't mean hasn't got personality. And so even though arches are in vogue now, it was not because we thought arches were going to be cool. It's because of the context. There's this great sort of Mediterranean history, this ethnicity, Greek and Italian families moving into the area and creating orange and brown brick homes with these arches on it that are much unloved, unfortunately, and getting knocked down. But also you look along the street and there's all these incredible arches along the street. And we just thought, hang on, if we're going to build a big building where there's predominantly 2 stories elsewhere, let's actually engage with that. It's sort of Kenneth Frampton's critical regionalism. How do you do something new of our time but still have a conversation?
Was this designed when you were in the office was in your
in my
house?
Yeah.
Which has the big arch?
Yeah.
With the brick and brown bricks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you're just going, oh yeah, we can use this.
that'll do.
And it's a skinny, long space as well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, learning from the past. And also just being in practice long enough to sort of get my ego in check. instead of going, oh, I've got to do something new and wacky, is actually go, that works, it's appropriate for the site, let's just be custodians of well-worn ideas. It's something that Vokes Peters from Brisbane talks about. You know, we're not going to create new wacky ideas. We are custodians of well-worn ideas, going back to last week's episode, and we will, in a professional, mature way, apply that where needed. That's what we've done here, but we've taken language of a smaller context and trying to make this bigger building be a halfway point to try and inform new development.
So do we have a summary and wrap up?
We've got a summary, which is this has been a difficult journey for Austin Maynard Architects, but...
Which I'm not part of, guys. Stop
No.
saying I'm part of AMA, I'm not part of AMA, okay? So make that clear right now.
He was just one of the lovely 19 people, me included, and Mark Austin, that threw in some cash to make this happen. But the reality is, I wouldn't change anything. Like, the reality is we've created these super sustainable homes, you know, over 8 stars energy efficiency that will have the just incredibly low running costs. So in terms of the ongoing affordability of living here.
That's a good point about running cost. Because often people just kind of look at the price figure of the housing as opposed to thinking about how much it's going to cost to run it. Like, just looking over there, a lot of the glass apartments, my parents bought a couple of them and some of them faces west. Beautiful, double glazed, everything, you know, they're well designed by even famous, good firms, good bones, but yeah, it gets hot.
Yeah.
And in summertime, air conditioner has to be on, otherwise you're going to cook in there.
Yeah. See, that's the thing, is these are cheaper than all the other apartments in the area, but we have things like energy recovery units, which is an extra cost. Like, you know, for a lot of places, you're forced to then bring an air conditioner in. So you've got to pay for that, plus the running cost. And also, our apartments face east and west. We can't get a northern orientation. So that means in summer, getting blasted in the morning, getting blasted in the afternoon. So we've got roller blinds that are on the outside of the balcony, so you can roll those down, protect your glazing. Not only your glazing, but you also capture that outdoor space and protect that and any plants you may have on it. So all these things are built into the purchase price, but then they also contribute to that really low running cost ongoing.
Yeah, because doing glass box and putting blinds inside, the heat is already in.
Yeah, you've got
Can't
to
do
stop the sun in summer from hitting the glass.
Simple building science.
Yeah, but it requires an initial outlay, you know.
It does, yeah.
Again, another reason why AMA's worked for free for 3 years, because we've got to pay for things that will ensure that this building, you know, is low maintenance and has low running costs. And so the embedded energy network, so buying green energy in bulk, buying internet, super fast internet in bulk. So all of these costs
Shared
come right
infrastructure.
down. Yeah. And this is what happens when you live as part of a community. You have all of those cost benefits, but you also have mental health benefits. We evolved to live in little tribes. We've created this little tribe.
So what's the takeaway for our audience?
Don't be a developer. What's the takeaway for the audience? We need housing solutions. And the inequity in housing is growing and growing. So we've got to try new things. And we've put our money where our mouth is. We've tried something. I think we've got some significant victories here. Is it perfect? Of course it's not. There is no perfect solution. Well, it probably is, but it's in Northern Europe.
But it's little steps.
Little steps. And that's the thing, in the scheme of things, this is a huge step. And you can already see it out in the market. Traditional developers are slipstreaming these ideas. Livability has never been more important. Sustainability has never been more important in terms of saleability, because that's what they're worried about, is their sales. So we've got to have a certain number of stars, energy efficiency. We've got to have a certain amount of greenery on this building. We've got to address community in more ways than just doing a pretty render with some lattes and the word community written across there. Like, what does that actually mean? So the market in terms of developers as housing providers is already shifting.
And so Slate House, that is a result. It came after this, didn't it? This whole movement.
Yep, a traditional developer going into a conservative place like Brighton and saying, let's bring these ideas into this conservative place. And it's doing really, really well because of that. So you said the word at the start, disrupting. It's disrupted the market, but I think more importantly, it's informed the market. It's allowed purchasers to see that they can demand better. That living in an apartment doesn't have to be a compromise. It can actually be better in many ways. And it's allowed developers to see that they can create a more nuanced product that's not just driven by what a real estate agent says. You need 1 car park, 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms. So I think we've helped mature the market.
But you wouldn't do this again?
I won't be a developer again. I will definitely be involved in delivery of multi-residential homes, but I think I'll just do it as an architect. Especially because a lot of the developers are now switched onto this. So I don't have to take the risk anymore. I don't have to potentially lose my house. We'll do a walkthrough when this is all finished and show you the innards.
Innards.
This building that we are so proud of in another episode. But thank you for watching. We love you guys. Hit that notification button, please. Go on. And I'd say subscribe, but it turns out that some of you went down and hit the subscribe button, which you hadn't realised you're already subscribed to, so therefore you unsubscribed. Counterproductive, people.
Resubscribe.
Resubscribe. Now they go, oh, I'll subscribe. Don't unsubscribe.
Unsubscribe. Resubscribe. Unsubscribe. Resubscribe.
Yeah.
That doesn't count.
Yeah. Bye.